Hello, my name is Sean Howard, owner and inventor of Weathered Stone. Today we're going to walk you through the installation of weathered stone on a flat wall with a few standard openings. Here we start out using a 1x4 routed down with a 1/4 inch router bit to give us a surface to install around the windows and add some accent. The first thing you want to do when looking at installing weathered stone in a room is to first look at the size of the room as well as the openings. Typically we're working with one of the standard sizes, which is a 24, 32, or 45 by 33. In this room, because we're only working with 8-foot ceilings, as well as with very small wall space, we wanted to give a little bit more interest and break up the pattern some. That's why we're going to go ahead and use a 16 by 24. Draw the completed layout on the entire wall and know where every single piece is going to go before you start cutting the pieces. This will allow you to present something to your client and show them exactly where these pieces are going to go and be able to get an approval. Typically we're going to focus on our accent pieces first and then do the rest of the wall from there. And then with 77 inches. Now we want to have an odd number of pieces along this top header, so we have one piece centered above the center stilt. So working with a 24 by 16, the closest number to that is going to be a 12, but we're going to go ahead and use an 11 because that divides evenly into the 77. The stilts themselves are 50 inches tall. So we'll step back a little bit and use a 10-inch piece rather than an 11-inch piece. This will give a nice balanced look to the entire room, making the pieces around the accent just a little bit smaller than the pieces on the actual wall itself. We'll measure to the center of the 77 inches and come up with 38.5. Then from there, we'll center this on 5.5 because we're using an 11-inch piece and place marks along the wall every 11 inches. And continue on doing that on the bases, and then also on the stilts we'll measure down and put marks at every 10 inches. From there, we can go ahead and darken those lines in using a framer square so we know where these pieces are going to go. The last thing to do is to determine how wide of the pieces we're going to use. Basically all we have to do is measure around, and here we find that those pieces are going to be 17 inches. So all the pieces on our stilts are going to end up being 17 inches by 10 inches tall. On the doorway we want to closely match the sizes that we're using around the windows. Around the top we're using 11-inch pieces on the windows. So measuring the top of the door casing, we find that it's 49 inches. If we actually used a 12.5-inch piece, that would be close enough to the 11-inch piece to work. The height of the door casing is 80 inches. So therefore, we can actually use the same size that we worked with around the windows, a 10-inch piece, to fill in around the door casings. Once we finish drawing in all the lines around the openings, we can go ahead and get started on our main wall sections. Now this wall here, we measure and comes to 29 inches. If we center a piece, because we're working with a 24 by 16, that's only going to leave us with 2.5 inches on either side. And we don't want to have any pieces smaller than 5 inches. Otherwise it would look unstructurally sound. So I'll have to use our flat wall conversion. The first thing we'll need to do is measure to the center of the wall, here at 29 inches, to 14.5, which is half of 29. Now we're working with a 24-inch wide piece, so we'll have to take 1/4 of that width, which is 6 inches, and measure away from that center point 6 inches either way. So we'll measure 6 inches here and 6 inches here. Now we know where our vertical seams are going to be. We can go ahead and sketch in our horizontal seams because they're 16 inches tall each. So just lightly draw those in, coming down every 16 inches. just to get an idea of where these lines should be. Now we can draw in our vertical seams. You can use any door as an adjustment area or as a header. Basically, if we continue on from where our vertical seams are here at our 24 inches, we can make the other side end up the exact same way by adjusting a couple of pieces in the top. So by measuring over, we find 6.5, and we'll mark here at 6.5. And then we can measure between those two and end up with 36, half of which is 18. So we can have a sink, two pieces here that are 18 inches wide. Now be careful when you go into the corner to make sure that your vertical seams are not too close to the corner or too close to the actual door jamb. So we'll measure over and just continue on to see where our seams are going to end up. And here we end up with 10 inches, and if we measure back 12 inches, which is half of the width of the panel we're working with, and place a mark, we find that these pieces will be 9, which is close enough to work. Now we can also balance this out if we wanted to by adjusting this piece. So here we have 8 inches. If we wanted to make this side 8, we would only have to move one of these seams back 1/2 inch.